Earlier this week on the community tab, I asked you guys for some unpopular championship predictions ahead of the new season, and you've not disappointed. In today's video, we're going to be going through some of my favourites, reacting to them, giving my own thoughts as well. And if you'd like to see a part 2 of this video, drop your unpopular championship predictions in the comments down below. 800 likes would be massively appreciated. Without any further ado, let's jump in. Gary Hoyle says Birmingham and Wrexham will find it much tougher in the championship and will struggle for even a top half finish. Now, if you look at the current bookmakers' odds, they've got both Birmingham and Wrexham to finish in the top half next season. Birmingham are currently their 4th favourites for promotion. I do think in the case of Wrexham especially, at the moment, that this next jump up to the championship will come as a bit more of a bump to them than their recent promotions to, League 2 and League 1 have come as. The reason I say that is because I think there's so much work to do with Wrexham this summer and that squad that they've got coming up to the championship. I think that Birmingham, even if they were to make no additions whatsoever, already have a ready-made squad for the championship that's ready to compete and be a solid mid-table outfit. Wrexham don't quite have that yet. Obviously, the reason they're being so hyped right now is because of the levels of investment that we could see from them this summer. But until that happens, it's hard to make a definitive prediction on them. Another one about Wrexham, Oscar says Wrexham will struggle and finish in the bottom 6. Now, I completely think that if Wrexham were to come up to the championship, not make any additions to their squad as it is now, they'd be nailed on for a bottom 6 finish, in my opinion. But like we were saying before, it all comes down to the level of investment, because Wrexham do have the financial muscles to flex, and they will be able to outgun a lot of mid-table, solid mid-table championship sides going into next season in the transfer market, and obviously that gives them a massive advantage in that sense. But nothing is a given in this league, and there's definitely a few people that are tipping Wrexham to struggle this year, which I think is interesting. John says Millwall to go up via the playoffs. I've got to admit, I do have a bit of a soft spot for Millwall at the moment. I think because Alex Neil is the manager there, and I still have fond memories of him being at North End. Obviously went agonisingly close to getting us into the playoffs a few years ago. Alex Neil, it just didn't quite click for us. What Millwall have in their favour going into next season is they will have money to spend, at least they should, because of some of their recent sales. They've already got a solid group of players that I think have bought into that Alex Neil hard-working mentality. Once you combine all those ingredients, I could definitely see Millwall being there or thereabouts next season. CAFC Ben says Reds staying up. By Reds, I'm assuming he's talking about Charlton there. And you know what? Charlton are getting a bit of a rough ride at the moment, because so much of the media attention, what fans are talking about at the moment with the clubs coming up from League 1, all of that spotlight is on Birmingham and Wrexham, and in that regard, Charlton have been somewhat overlooked. But one thing that I keep reiterating to myself is a lot of Charlton's underlying stats in League 1 last season were actually better than Wrexham's. Now, obviously, Wrexham have the financial power to, massively outspend some championship sides next season that Charlton perhaps don't. But in terms of the base layer that both clubs are working at coming up to the championship, Charlton aren't that far behind Wrexham, and you can make some arguments that a number of positions in their squad are actually a bit superior at the moment, in my opinion. They've also got a really good manager in Nathan Jones as well, who knows this level. Yeah, don't be overlooking Charlton going into next season. Mr. RDW5 says, I may be biased, but I would happily stick 20 quid on Colby Bishop being the league top scorer. I love that sort of optimism. Now, to be fair, Colby Bishop was brilliant for Pompey last season, had a really strong end to the season as well, and I have done a bit of maths on this one as well. So last season in the championship, Colby Bishop scored 11 goals in 2,636 minutes of championship football. If he was to keep up that exact same record next season, but he plays every single game of the season, that would mean he'd score about 17 or 18 goals. Whether that would be enough to win the Golden Boot, I'm not so sure, but he could be in the conversation. Prince of Cats says Norwich to get promoted. I mean, we'll have to wait and see what sort of transfer business they do, but they've got to be better than last season. I know they're likely to lose Borja Sainz, Josh Sargent, maybe a couple of others, but last season was such an underperformance from Norwich that, yeah, they've got to bounce back surely, especially with the manager like Liam Manning in there now. Tony Smith says Rooney to manage 3 clubs and all 3 get relegated. What a scenario that would be. Where does Wayne Rooney's coaching career go from here is what I'm asking, because I just cannot envisage a championship club giving Wayne Rooney a role right now. I just think they'd have to be out of their minds. What I could see is maybe a club in League 1 taking that gamble on him. But I think you'd be mad giving Rooney a role in the Championship right now. What are you guys saying though? As a rogue shout, where's Wayne Rooney's next managerial job? Comment down below. Liam UTO says Sheffield Wednesday won't do as bad as people are predicting. I think a lot of people have Wednesday down in their bottom 3 predictions right now, obviously because of all the issues that they're facing off the pitch. Listen, it is those sort of off the field issues that largely hampers and influences relegation battles. If we are talking about an embargo potential point deduction, that could get really nasty, but there is still a solid core of players there that obviously managed to finish mid-table last season. Liam K isn't feeling as optimistic though for Wednesday's upcoming season. He says Sheffield Wednesday to get the lowest points total in Championship history. Now that would take all sorts of stuff to go wrong, both on and off the football pitch. As things stand, it's Rotherham United who hold the record for the lowest ever point total in Championship history. Just 23 points they accumulated in the 2016/17 season. That's going to take some doing to beat that record. Stephen G is predicting 3 managers at Hull next season, and honestly, I can maybe see that. Hull are the sort of club where I just cannot envisage a scenario where next season is just a boring mid-table season for them. I just cannot see that as a possibility. I think they're either going to be stinking it out at the bottom end of the Championship, or they're going to be fighting for a place in the top 6. That's just the nature of Hull under this ownership. I do think there's maybe a bit of pressure with Sergei Yakirovich coming into that job. A bit of pressure to start well, because I do think if we get into like November and Hull are in the bottom 6, let's say, I think the owner probably does pull the trigger and look to make a managerial change there. I love this shout from Charlie. He says Charlton to finish highest out of all of the promoted teams. I imagine you get crazy odds on that right now with any of the bookmakers. Birmingham fancied by a lot of people for a top 6 finish this season. Obviously, we were speaking about Wrexham before, how a lot of people think they'll be comfy, and Charlton, one of the favourites for relegation. But one thing that I do think Charlton can play into, especially in the first half of this season, will be that underdog tag. And I think a manager like Nathan Jones especially will play quite well up to that. I thought this was an interesting shout. One of the Welsh teams to be promoted. So you've gone quite non-specific there. We're talking either Swansea or Wrexham. Honestly, could Swansea be a bit of a dark horse at the top 6 next season? They ended last season in really good form, didn't they? They lost their way sort of part way through that season. But after Alan Sheehan took the reins, yeah, they went on a really good run. Already been fairly proactive in the transfer market as well. Yeah, don't sleep on Swansea at the moment. EFL Fantasy Josh says Bristol City playoff winners. This upcoming season will be a very interesting one for Bristol City because, I mean, we'll sort of figure out, was last season Bristol City hitting their ceiling in the Championship, or can this same group of players go again but with a new manager? Because what we have seen from Bristol City in recent seasons is year upon year progression, you know, going back to Nigel Pearson, who set a lot of the foundations for Bristol City's success today. Liam Manning took that on and added to it even more. Do they carry on building going into next season, or does it all sort of topple away and they have a bit of a hard reset? Oh, Harrison, this isn't what I want to be hearing from you. Preston and Blackburn will be relegated, so will Southampton. That Southampton relegation shout is absolutely mad, by the way, and if that comes off, fair play to you. I don't think many people, to be fair, last season were calling that Luton relegation. Obviously, Southampton coming down as one of the worst teams in Premier League history, but with the finances they'll have behind them, the parachute payments, a good manager in Will Still, they're obviously among the bookies' favourites for promotion right now. The Preston relegation shout hurts, but to be fair, I get it. I think a few people in the fan base will be a little bit pessimistic coming into this upcoming season because of how last season finished for us. The start to this transfer window, I think there have been a few signs of promise, to be fair, especially getting in Everson and Thierry Small, but there's still a long way to go, isn't there? We're really seeing a range of shouts here because this next one I saw was Preston to get into the playoffs. I hate the fact that of all of the bold predictions that we've had on this video so far, that one right there is maybe the most unrealistic right now, but we as Preston fans can live in hope. To be fair, for as bad as the end to last season was, I still think there were reasons for optimism. The run in the FA Cup, there was also a point under Heckingbottom last season where I thought we were playing quite nice football, to be honest with you. Statistically, we were creating more chances last season than we were under Ryan Lowe previously as well. But then that terrible ending to the season sort of put a dampener on everything. But yeah, Preston to get the playoffs, why not? How about Watford getting the playoffs? That was another shout that I saw in the comments. Watford, similar to what I was saying about Hull before, a bit of an all or nothing feeling I'm getting about them going into next season. Obviously, the ownership there is highly ambitious. One of the main factors behind them getting rid of Cleverley was that they want to have a playoff push going into next season, and they didn't feel like Cleverley was the right manager to give that to them. And they're just a really tough one to put your finger on, because the first half of last season, Watford were in and around that playoff race, weren't they? But then there was just such a drastic drop-off in their form from sort of January onwards. From that period until the end of the season, Watford accumulated the fewest amount of points in the Championship. So which version of them shows up for next season, I guess is anyone's guess. Sunderland G8 has Southampton to miss out on the playoffs. Yeah, that's definitely an unpopular opinion, isn't it? EFL View with a really bold call here that Bristol City will be in a relegation fight. Now, we have seen that in previous years where a team has gone above and beyond their means to finish in the top six, and then the following year they're entrenched in the relegation battle. And I suppose it goes back to what we were saying before. Have Bristol City hit their ceiling, or is there still more to come? For them to go from a playoff semi-final to a relegation battle, though, in the span of 1 year would be pretty disastrous. It would take quite the tumble, wouldn't it? Jake says all promoted teams to stay up, QPR and Preston to get relegated. Oh, it's a dagger to my heart, but I have seen a few of those Preston relegation shouts, and don't worry, I don't take any of them personally. Honestly, the all promoted teams to stay up angle, I could see happening again, to be honest with you. Obviously, it happened in this season just gone by, with Oxford, Derby and Pompey all surviving. I don't actually think that the gap from, the bottom of the Championship to the top of League One is actually that big. I think it is quite interchangeable with a lot of teams. Certainly nowhere near the gap between the bottom of the Premier League and top of the Championship tends to be. And we'll finish with this one from Armchair Jockey. He says Phil Parkinson to be the first sacking of the Championship season. Now, hear me out. I don't think that one is utterly bonkers. Now, first sacking of the season, alright, I'm not sure I can see that. But I do think there is a chance that Wrexham finish this season in the Championship with a different manager. The reason I say that is how much loyalty do Wrexham feel to Phil Parkinson right now, because he's obviously done such an amazing job for them. But this next step into the Championship feels like a bit of untested waters for Parkinson, really. I know he's managed in the Championship before, but he's never managed a Championship club with the sort of ambitions of Wrexham in the Championship, has he? If, let's throw a hypothetical out there, Wrexham are in the bottom 5 come December, does the Wrexham board then get a little bit twitchy and think, do you know what, we can probably secure a bit of an upgrade in the managerial department? Because man motivation, man management, Phil Parkinson I think is absolutely brilliant, but tactically in the Championship, I do think Wrexham have the pull where they could arguably attract a sort of bottom-end Premier League manager to that project. That will be something that Wrexham will be going back and forth with, I feel like. Maybe not in this Championship season, but the next season or two, yeah, I think they'll definitely be considering that. But there you guys have it. That will now wrap up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to drop a like. And any more unpopular Championship opinions, make sure to get them in the comments down below. Apart from that though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.